cold wind howled through the darkened streets of Godric's Hollow, carrying whispers of unrest. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, as if the world itself recoiled in dread. The quiet was unnatural, broken only by the faint crunch of leaves under the boots of a hooded figure. The war had begun. James Potter's hand tightened on his wand as he moved silently through the alleyways, his eyes darting to every flicker of movement. The Order of the Phoenix had received intelligence of Death Eater activity in the village. If they were here, it wasn't for idle terror. Voldemort's plans were never random. "Lumos," James muttered, the tip of his wand casting a soft glow that barely cut through the oppressive darkness. He glanced over his shoulder, where Sirius Black followed, his eyes sharp and wary. "You feel it, don't you?" Sirius whispered, his voice low but steady. James nodded. The air was heavy with dark magic, an invisible weight pressing down on them. "They're here. Stay sharp." The two wizards moved as one, their years of friendship and battles fought side by side, lending them an almost instinctual synchronicity. They had faced Death Eaters before, but tonight felt different. The stakes had risen with each passing day, the lines between life and death thinning in Voldemort's shadow. At the edge of the village square, James paused, his wand arm steady as he scanned the area. The statue of the wizard, witch, and child that stood at its center had been defaced. Deep gashes marred the figures, runes etched in blood glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is a message," Sirius said grimly, stepping closer to inspect the runes. "But what's it meant to say?" James didn't answer immediately. His gaze fixed on the surrounding buildings, their windows dark and lifeless. The village was eerily silent, as if the residents had sensed the danger and hidden away. Then it happened. A flash of green light lit up the square, followed by the chilling scream of a woman. James's heart clenched as he and Sirius broke into a sprint, the sound of their footsteps loud in the suffocating quiet. They rounded a corner to find a scene of chaos. Two Death Eaters stood over a prone figure, their masks gleaming in the light of a nearby street lamp. One of them raised their wand, but before the curse could leave their lips, James acted. "Stupefy," he roared, the red streak of his stunning spell hitting the Death Eater square in the chest. They crumpled to the ground, their wand clattering away. Sirius was already on the other, his spells precise and relentless. "James, behind you!" Sirius shouted. James spun just in time to block a killing curse, the force of the impact sending him staggering back. Another Death Eater emerged from the shadows, their wand aimed directly at him. His mind raced, the adrenaline sharpening his focus. Expelliarmus! James's spell struck true, the Death Eater's wand flying from their grasp. Sirius dispatched the remaining attacker with a well-placed stunner, the masked figure crumpling in a heap. For a moment, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing. Then James moved to the prone figure, kneeling beside them. It was a young woman, her face pale but alive. She stirred as he touched her shoulder, her eyes fluttering open. "You're safe now," James said gently. "What happened?" Her voice was barely a whisper. They were looking for something. In the church, James and Sirius exchanged a grim look. Whatever the Death Eaters wanted, it couldn't be good. As the night deepened, the Order of the Phoenix gathered at their safe house, the atmosphere tense. Lily Potter, her fiery red hair catching the light of the room's lone candle, listened intently as James recounted the events in Godric's Hollow. Beside her, Remus Lupin's face was lined with worry, his normally calm demeanor replaced by a palpable unease. "They were targeting the church," James finished. "We need to find out why." "It's not just the church," Alastair Moody growled, his magical eye swiveling to survey the room. "There's been activity reported in 3 other villages tonight. They're escalating." Dumbledore, seated at the head of the table, steepled his fingers. His blue eyes, usually twinkling with a mix of mischief and wisdom, were grave. "Voldemort grows bolder with each passing day. We must be prepared for what's to come." Sirius leaned forward, his expression fierce. "Then let's hit them back. Show them we're not afraid." "We're not afraid," Lily said sharply, her green eyes blazing. But we can't afford to be reckless. Every move we make has to count. Dumbledore nodded. Lily is right. This war will not be won through brute force alone. It requires strategy, unity, and courage. The room fell silent, each member lost in their own thoughts. The weight of the war was heavy on all of them, but they knew they couldn't falter. The fight against Voldemort was more than a battle of spells and curses. It was a battle for the soul of the wizarding world. And so, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the Order prepared for the days ahead, their resolve unshaken. The First Wizarding War had only just begun, and its outcome was far from certain. But one thing was clear. They would fight with everything they had for the sake of their world and the generations to come. The following weeks saw the Order of the Phoenix stretched thin. Reports of Death Eater attacks came in daily, each one more brutal than the last. Villages burned, families disappeared, and fear seeped into every corner of the wizarding world. Yet, amid the darkness, the Order stood firm, their determination a beacon of hope. In a hidden room beneath the Black family home, now repurposed as a headquarters, Sirius and Remus pored over a map of Britain. Tiny pins marked areas of Death Eater activity, a grim tapestry of Voldemort's influence spreading like a cancer. They're moving strategically, Remus observed, tracing a line between the pins. Each attack brings them closer to something. But what? Sirius's jaw tightened. It doesn't matter what they're after. We'll stop them. We need more information, Remus said. The Ministry's intelligence is unreliable at best. Half the Aurors are compromised, and the other half are overwhelmed. Then we gather our own, Sirius said firmly. We got contacts, people we can trust. If Voldemort's planning something big, we'll find out what it is. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lily and James, both looking exhausted but resolute. James carried a stack of parchments, which he dropped onto the table with a sigh. More reports, he said. Mostly the same. Attacks, disappearances, whispers of dark magic. But there's something new. Lily held up a piece of parchment, her expression grave. We've intercepted a communication. It's coded, but it mentions a gathering. Something big. In 2 weeks. Where? Sirius demanded. That's the problem, Lily admitted. The location isn't clear. But we have a name. Malfoy Manor. The room fell silent. The Malfoy family's allegiance to Voldemort was no secret, but a gathering at their manor suggested something far more dangerous than the usual Death Eater scheming. We'll need to infiltrate, James said. Find out what they're planning and stop it before it's too late. That's easier said than done, Remus pointed out. Malfoy Manor is heavily warded. Getting in undetected will be nearly impossible. Nearly impossible isn't the same as impossible, Sirius said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. We've done it before. We'll do it again. Lily placed a hand on James's arm, her voice soft but firm. We need a plan. A good one. No rushing in blind. James covered her hand with his, nodding. We'll plan, but we're running out of time. If this gathering is as important as it seems, it could change everything. 2 weeks later, under the cover of a moonless night, a small group of Order members stood outside the gates of Malfoy Manor. The air was thick with tension, each of them acutely aware of the danger they faced. James, Sirius, Lily, and Remus had volunteered for the mission, their resolve unshaken despite the odds. Remember, James whispered, his voice barely audible, stealth is our priority. Get in, gather information, and get out. No unnecessary risks. The others nodded, their wands at the ready. Together, they approached the gates, their footsteps muffled by the soft grass. James raised his wand, muttering a spell under his breath. The gates shimmered briefly before swinging open silently. The group moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as they navigated the sprawling grounds. The manor loomed ahead, its dark silhouette a stark contrast against the starless sky. They reached the main entrance without incident, but the real challenge lay within. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old wood and dark magic. The halls were eerily silent, the only sound the faint crackle of torches lining the walls. The group split up, each member assigned to a different area of the manor. James and Lily headed toward the library, their footsteps light on the marble floors. The room was vast, its shelves lined with books that radiated a palpable aura of dark magic. James scanned the titles, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a familiar name. "Here," he whispered, pulling a book from the shelf. "It's a journal. Could be useful." Lily nodded, her attention focused on the desk in the center of the room. Papers were scattered across its surface, many of them covered in runes and diagrams. She quickly began sorting through them, her sharp mind piecing together fragments of information. Meanwhile, Sirius and Remus searched the lower levels, their progress slower but no less determined. They encountered several wards, each one more complex than the last. Sirius's skill with curses proved invaluable, his wand movements precise as he dismantled each barrier. They reached a locked door, its surface etched with glowing runes. Remus examined them closely, his brow furrowing. "This isn't just a ward. It's a trap. If we trigger it, the entire manor will know we're here." Sirius smirked, his confidence unshaken. "Then let's not trigger it." He set to work, his focus unwavering as he carefully unraveled the spell. Minutes stretched into an eternity, but finally, the runes dimmed, and the door creaked open. Inside, they found a small room filled with artifacts, each one radiating dark magic. "This is it," Remus said, his voice tinged with awe and dread. "This is what they've been collecting." Sirius's expression hardened. "Then we'll make sure they never use it." The two began gathering evidence, their movements quick and efficient. Time was running out, and they knew the longer they stayed, the greater the risk. Back in the library, James and Lily had made a similar discovery. The papers they'd collected painted a chilling picture of Voldemort's plans. But before they could leave, a voice cut through the silence. "Leaving so soon?" They turned to find Lucius Malfoy standing in the doorway, his wand aimed directly at them. His smile was cold, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "You should have stayed hidden, Potter," he sneered. "But now you'll see what happens to those who defy the Dark Lord." James raised his wand, his stance steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We'll see about that." The duel began, spells flying through the air with deadly precision. Lily joined in, her magic a blur of light and power. But Malfoy was no ordinary opponent, his skill and ruthlessness a testament to his position within Voldemort's inner circle. The battle raged on, the library's once pristine shelves now scorched and shattered. James and Lily fought with everything they had, their love for each other, and their cause fueling their determination. Elsewhere in the manor, Sirius and Remus encountered their own resistance. Death Eaters poured into the lower levels, their numbers overwhelming. But the two friends stood their ground, their spells a deadly dance of defiance. "We need to get out of here," Remus shouted over the chaos. Sirius nodded, his grin defiant even as the odds stacked against them. Not without the others. They fought their way back toward the upper levels, their path marked by the bodies of their enemies. When they reached the library, they found James and Lily still locked in battle with Malfoy. "Reinforcements," Sirius called, his wand already aiming at Malfoy. The tide of the battle shifted as the four friends fought together, their bond an unbreakable force against the darkness. Finally, with a well-placed spell, James disarmed Malfoy, sending his wand flying across the room. The Death Eater glared at them, his defeat palpable, but his defiance unbroken. "This isn't over," he snarled before disappearing with a crack of apparition.